Hey everyone, welcome back to Menace and the Monk. And because of y'all, back on popular demand, Babu Yago, Stephen Drennan joins us. Stephen, thank you so much for joining
Ple-
us once again. I hope you're fine.
yeah, pleasure to be here. It's a lot of fun last time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome,
Awesome,
Stephen.
Stephen. So, Stephen, let's just start off with the start of the season. What do you make of it? Have you seen anything different tactically from Liverpool so far?
There's always little adjustments, but it's pretty much more or less what we kind of saw while we were dominant, I guess, in the league. And I always expected that last season would be the anomaly or the outlier or the blip, whatever word you want to use. I was kind of expecting us to get back to this. It was interesting to hear Klopp saying that at the weekend we found our best counter pressing form again. Finally, it's obviously something they've been working on to try and get back. And it's starting to click. And it's interesting to hear him say that because Firmino wasn't on the pitch and Wijnaldum wasn't on the pitch. And if you listen to like Pep Lijnders talk in the past, they're two players that were very crucial to how we counter press. They were the people who blocked the space centrally to prevent like teams playing through our midfield. So the fact that we're having to adjust to that, adjust without those two players, and Klopp feels it's not at the level he wants it to be at, that's a really big positive. And that's without actually signing anybody to solve the problems of them not being on the pitch.
Right, definitely. And speaking of players or people who are not on the pitch last season, Menace, it looks like Virgil Van Dyke and Matip is the go-to partnership for this particular season. I mean, I know it's early days, but what are your thoughts on that?
See, sorry, Stephen.
No, go ahead.
I'll just have a go at this. Nidhi, if you remember, we created a video about the centre back situation that we have since we signed Kanate, and we had Reece Williams at that time, and Nat Phillips has signed a new deal as well. So at the moment we have 5 centre backs because Reece has gone out on loan, and we both felt that our main centre back pairing is going to be Virgil Van Dyke and Joel Matip. I don't remember Joel Matip having a bad game ever in a Liverpool jersey. And Klopp recently mentioned about Joel Matip, how underrated he is. And we actually spoke about it a few months back as well. Joel Matip, his positioning sense, his partnership with Virgil van Dijk, and just how comfortable he is with the ball, the way he progresses up the field. Like a praying mantis. He's kind of awkward at times, but he is just so bloody effective. If you remember the goal against Leeds, the first goal that we scored, Salah tapped it in. His movement, his advancement in the opposition box. This is what we are talking about. And what I'm really happy to see is that even when we have rested Van Dijk, even when Matip is not started, Konate played a game recently against Palace. We have done all right. And that's a big positive for us. But for me, throughout the season, I would want to see Van Dijk and Matip start more games. Stephen, what do you reckon? What do you think about the centre-back situation?
Yeah, what I would say is that if you're going to be a team that's going to be dominant, then your first defenders are your strikers and your first attackers are your defenders. And I think that's what we saw last season whenever we lost Van Dijk and Matip. It isn't a problem defensively as much having Nat Phillips in the defense, but it's a huge problem in terms of like building up attacks and trying to break through lines of the opposition, because those are skill sets that the absolute elite defenders have. That's why you buy those players, and that's why they cost a huge premium. And so trying to get that onto the pitch with your like 4th, 5th, 6th choice, that's going to be really hard, because you can coach defending a lot easier than you can coach someone to be brave on the ball, to carry it past forwards, to have that little feint and that little burst of pace to escape a press. And Matip has that. Joe Gomez has it. Kanate has a lot of it, which is really encouraging for the future. Van Dijk doesn't really carry the ball forward in that sense, but he just has these rapier passes that just cuts teams apart in the space of a second. And again, it's just really good to have all of those different options, and we can't really go wrong. It's interesting you were saying about Joel Matip not really having a good game. I was very critical of Joel Matip when he first arrived because I said he used to be too passive. And you mostly noticed it when he played with Clavin, because Clavin is really passive. So you end up with two really passive centre backs, and neither of them actually deals with the ball. And there was a goal I remember against Burnley. I think it was Arfield that scored it. And that one always sticks in my mind because the ball just like bounces around all over the place, and they're both just watching it. Neither of them wants to deal with it. And eventually someone just picks it up and hammers it into the corner, and you're just like, oh, forget. One of you needs to deal with the ball. Just one of you, pick one. Don't care, but just one of you. And so that always sticks in my mind. But it's really interesting that that's completely left his game. And if anything, he's very aggressive now and very dominant. And it's just so refreshing, I guess, to have centre backs that are very very capable in all situations. And that's what we have. Because you look at other centre backs and have limitations. I think Diaz was a good example yesterday where he got pulled out of to close the ball down, got feinted past by Armstrong, and then Southampton almost got a penalty as a direct result. He's very aggressive. He likes to go to ground. We don't really have any defenders that are like that. And that was the worry when Konate signed, is that we were going to get this guy that was a bit Lovren-ish and sort of like to go in the ground and dive in. And you saw it yesterday. He was phenomenal. Like he made a few mistakes because it's his first game in the Premier League, and I kind of expect that. But the thing I loved is how he dealt with his own mistakes, because he didn't panic at all for even a second. He stayed really calm. Just got close to the attacker, pushed them wide away from goal, and then forced a bad shot. And it was just, it's just perfect of him. And it was just so encouraging, because I was thinking, if you think that Van Dijk's going to be like 2, 3, 4 years at the top left, whatever that number is, Konate looks like someone you could build into being his replacement in the future. And we've already got that guy locked down at the club. That's massive.
That is absolutely massive. Nidhi, I mean, last season there were games where Henderson and Fabinho were starting as centre backs, and now we have this luxury, and and now Virgil Van Dyke. We spoke about him. Just his sheer presence, Nidhi, just makes us, when we're watching the game on the telly, so calm, right?
Yep, absolutely. Look, that's exactly what even Stephen was talking about when we did our last podcast. That just Van Dijk being there gives everyone so much assurance, and we look so much better whenever Van Dijk is playing. I mean, the midfield looks better. Alisson is more assured. It's just a better show all around. I think Gomez was also pretty good on his return, and he must get credit as well. I mean, back after 10 long months of such a debilitating injury, and we are also we keep there's also Nat Phillips. There's Konate. So we have a lot of options now. But I think that, based on what we've seen this season and also before that, I would say that, Virgil and Matip is my go-to center partnership as well.
Stephen, if you had to pick one, like if you had to pick a pairing for the rest of the campaign, I know just 4-5 games into the season, one Champions League game, who would you go for?
For this campaign, it would definitely be Matip and Virgil. But I think for the future, I want Konate in the team very, very quickly. Well, I think once he settles down, I've seen enough to think he has all the attributes of an elite dominant centre back, and I'd like to see him on the pitch as soon as we can get him on the pitch. He just looks so good.
Absolutely. And from defense to midfield, Stephen. We have to talk about one guy, Naby Lad, who just scored this awesome rocket yesterday, and he was also impressive in a few other games as well. Do you think we'll see the best of Naby Keita this season? And with that, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what is our midfield? How's our midfield supposed to, or you expect it to see this particular season?
Yeah, well, basically, I think we talked about it in the last podcast, but the midfield has kind of 4 basic tasks, which is protecting the defence, linking play, penetrating and supporting the attack. And if you look at usually our midfield, it doesn't really have a lot of balance, because our fullbacks take some of the responsibility off the midfield in terms of penetration, progressing the ball and sort of supporting the attack. Our fullbacks, they have the pitch, they're like wingers. So our midfield needs to drop in and cover the spaces better behind the ball, which is what most teams do with their fullbacks. So our midfield's kind of irregular in that sense. But whenever you look at the options in midfield, like yesterday, for example, we had Fabinho, Thiago, and Henderson. You're lacking someone there in midfield that has that ability to just drop a shoulder, go past defenders, and start running at the back line and get in behind their midfield line. And that's what Keita gives us. And I think we looked really good when Ox done that for us as well, Oxlade-Chamberlain, before he got injured. I think we destroyed City solely because Oxlade-Chamberlain was just unplayable in that role of bursting beyond the midfield line, bringing the defence towards him, and if they back off, he'd just cannon one into the goal. So we have that in Naby Keita. It'd be nice if we could get Oxlade-Chamberlain back to that level, but I just don't know what the case is with his injury. I don't know if he's just simply lost that bit of confidence or explosiveness or something, but we have options, and it's very encouraging that we have different options to change our midfield.
Right.
The thing I would say is the more you change your midfield, the more we need to probably change other things as well, because if we're going to have midfielders getting caught ahead of the ball, we're going to have fewer players behind the ball to stop counterattacks, which probably means we need to have like one of our fullbacks high up the pitch and the other one maybe just stays behind a little bit. I'm not sure, but it's one of those things again where if you change something, it has a knock-on effect on the rest of the system. But yeah, I still think when we signed Naby Keita, the idea was to build a team around him. He was just that dominant midfielder, and he got compared to Gerrard. He's very different to Gerrard, but he got compared to Gerrard in the sense that he kind of carried that Leipzig team. He was their whole energy. And it was just that's why we all tuned in to watch Leipzig. It was to watch Naby Keita, and you saw him dominate games. He gave Bayern Munich the runaround pretty much on his own at times, and it was just phenomenal to watch. And we always looked and thought, if we ever get that guy on that form on the pitch, my goodness. And I think that's what we're all waiting for. And you have to remain positive until the club write him off. I'm not going to, because they have all the information. They have all the fitness tests. They see him in training. So if they're still confident in Naby Keita, we should be as well. I don't understand people writing off players before the club has. It just doesn't really make any sense to me, because the people who have all the information and have all the knowledge and experience haven't done so yet. So all we can do is get behind him, and he always looks a cracking little player. It's just keeping him fit and on pitch.
But Stephen, I mean, when we started the season, we saw Harvey Elliott get a few starts as well. Unfortunately, he got injured and looks like he's going to be out for some time. When we saw Harvey Elliott especially start against Chelsea, I was kind of surprised at how brave Jurgen Klopp has been, giving him the time and the start against such a strong team, the champions of Europe. That kind of changed the dynamics of the midfield. Like I said, the four things that the midfield is supposed to do. Harvey Elliott, in a way, was a trailblazer in a midfield.
Yeah. And again, he's in the same sort of category as Ox and Keita. He's maybe a bit different because he doesn't have that little explosive burst of pace, but he's more like, I always compare him to Adam Lallana, and people hate the comparison because people didn't like Adam Lallana. But if you remember whenever Gini Wijnaldum first arrived and we had Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Lallana in midfield, that was kind of like a perfect balanced trio. You had all the key tasks covered by someone. And Lallana was really, really good. And then he just got injuries and that was it. But I think Harvey Elliott's very similar to Lallana in that he can do things with either foot. He can break beyond the lines. He can just drop a shoulder and get past someone. I really like watching him play, but it's more the fact that like he's 18 and he's just so disciplined. And that's why Jurgen Klopp's playing him against Chelsea, because you can't go against the European champions with a kid in midfield who's sort of not got his head screwed on right, and he's going to make bad choices. He doesn't know how to control a game. He doesn't know game management. Like Harvey Elliott's playing like a senior pro, and that's ridiculous because he's 18. And Curtis Jones does the same. It's kind of mind blowing, but it makes me think about how much our academy's changed since the days of Rafa Benitez. Because I remember when Rafa Benitez came in, he didn't have confidence in any of the reserves or any of the kids coming up that they could actually do a job in the first team. It almost like the whole tactical discipline part of learning was just left out. They were all focused on physicality and technique, but they just hadn't learned how to be footballers. And I remember he saying I remember Steven Gerrard saying he basically went through a re-education when Rafa arrived. He basically learned how to play football differently. and it helped them a lot how to conserve energy, when to run, when not to, when to hold his position, when to drop in and cover for someone. Like it's kind of amazing he got as far as he did before Rafa, without knowing all these things. But these are all things he picked up after Rafa arrived. And Rafa shunted him onto the right wing, because in midfield, that's kind of a liability. You can't have a guy in central midfield that doesn't have those ingredients, for a Rafa Benitez system at least anyway. So he put him on the right wing, and while he picked that up, and then he moved him back centrally after a season of sort of relearning how to play the role in the way that he wanted. Harvey Elliott already has all that, and he's 18. And that's just crazy for me, because the sky's the limit when you have a kid that's that good and has all the ingredients already, and he's 18. That's
Absolutely. And, we are not even talking about the fact that, Harvey Elliott's eventual position might not even be midfield. I mean, he might just, play as a forward, sometime into the future. But speaking of, options, Manas, how good does it feel to have, some depth at left back? We used to talk about, how Robertson plays each and every minute, and, we were basically burned, running him into the ground. What's your thoughts on Tsimikas?
Last season was tough for Tsimikas.
Yes.
This season it's just so good to see the games that he's played. You can understand why he was voted the Greek Footballer of the Year. Last season, when he was voted, we kind of had a laugh because he hardly played a game for Liverpool. But he has been so solid defensively and also offensively. Obviously, the quality is way different compared to Andy Robertson, but he's in the same mold. Sure, James Milner can do a job. He can deputize over there. But now, I mean, 3-4 games into the season, whatever we've seen of Tsimikas, when Tsimikas starts at left back, I feel, all right, at least the style of play, at least the way we play, the momentum, the way we carry the ball forward will be similar. Maybe the final ball, maybe the output will be not similar to Robbo. Not that I'm taking anything away from Tsimikas, because he has a lot to prove compared to Andy Robertson. But I'm just so happy that if we need to rest Robbo, which we did at the weekend, we kept a clean sheet against Palace and we got all 3 points. His corner for the first goal, straight from the training ground, as you could see. And you could see Thiago and Mo Salah point at him, saying that you got that done. So I'm very happy, considering the fact that this is an area which we needed reassurance, because Robbo has been playing so much. James Milner filled in at right back, which is great. Stephen, what do you think about Tsimikas so far? Do you think he is someone, God forbid, if Andy Robertson is out for a month or longer, we can rely on him for a long time?
Yeah, I think it says a lot yesterday that when the team sheet came out and Tsimikas was playing instead of Robertson, we didn't really even blink. It's fine. We've basically just accepted now that he's like a second Robertson in the squad, which is, it's good. But it also goes back to that thing about Jurgen Klopp sort of always builds a team, and Rafa Benitez is the same. They build a team that's basically like a machine, and it's all just about finding the right part for the machine. And it doesn't have to be like the best part in the world, or we sign these guys that aren't that highly rated outside of like Jurgen Klopp and Michael Edwards, it seems. They pick up like Andy Robertson, they pick up Tsimikas, they pick up these guys for a few million, and they're just the perfect fit for the system. And it's kind of very hard to separate out at what point they are top class players and at what point it's basically they're just a perfect fit for the role that they're given. Like how much is the system adapted to just take out weaknesses from their games? How much would they look different playing in an entirely different team? And it's very hard to understand and very hard to, like, you see it with Bruno Fernandes, for example, when he plays for Portugal. And he just doesn't look the same player at all. And it's because the whole United system is built around him. But I think Jurgen Klopp's system is built around having certain players with certain abilities and positions. And if you get those things right, you don't even notice the weaknesses of the players. Whenever players left Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund, they never looked the same player at another team because they were just like the perfect cog for his system. They didn't have to be the best cog in the world. They were just perfect for it. Guys like Kagawa and Sahin and those guys, they left Dortmund and just they weren't the same player. They were never reached the same levels they did at Dortmund. And then they go back and they fit the system again. They look fine again.
Stephen,
and I think that's what we're seeing.
If I may interrupt you, Stephen, do you think the same thing is happening with Gini Wijnaldum at PSG? Early days, but do you think kind of something similar could happen, is happening with him?
Yeah, it's very possible. And the reason there is that basically PSG have different expectations, I guess, of their midfielders.
Right.
We were saying earlier that our fullbacks do a lot of the work for the midfielders in terms of progressing the ball, penetration, blah, blah, blah. So Gini Wijnaldum's role was very much just repelling counterattacks, and he was the best that we could get at doing that job. He was phenomenal at it. And he was also very good at just recycling the ball and knowing when to like slow down the game and just basically press the reset button, calm everything down, get everyone back into shape, and then go again. And it sounds like it's a very basic way to play, but it's also like it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of high mental acuity and for the player to play that way. And if you look back at some of the great teams, like your guys like Deschamps used to do this, and Mauro Silva used to do it for Brazil. And you would never see their name in lights, but they were just key players and a very good side. And that's what Gini Wijnaldum was for us. And then when you go to PSG, they probably have different expectations. I haven't watched PSG, to be honest. I have no interest in watching that league and the way it is now. But it's probably just very, very different expectations of them. And you're expecting one thing and you're just not getting it. I mean, we saw a lot of it from Liverpool fans, even when he was here, doing exactly what we needed him to do. Because some people didn't realize or respect that that's actually what we need him to do, that he wasn't going to be the 15 goal and assist midfielder he was in his first season here. So, yeah, I think it's just that. I mean, also, I would say that PSG fans are probably very entitled. So they probably expect their midfielders to be like miniaturized versions of Lionel Messi, and they just want like 11 Lionel Messi's on the pitch with every just beating people and playing penetrative passes and blah, blah, blah. And they probably just don't have any appreciation for the Claude Makelele's, I guess, of the world. And that's exactly what happened with the Galacticos. They got rid of Claude Makelele to get David Beckham. And Zinedine Zidane was like, what is the point of this? You're literally taking the engine out of the car to put more gold paint on it. Doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably what's going to happen with PSG.
Speaking of being entitled, Nidhi, at times, especially after the transfer window got done, there were certain supporters, our friends, nothing against them. We all are supporting the same family, the same team, but a lot was said. There was a bit of negativity, which we've spoken about. We haven't signed many players. We've let go of certain players. Now, considering the start of the season, what we've had, it was a great game against Milan, barring the few minutes that we had, which was bad. It's a great start of the season. We are still unbeaten. Nidhi, when it comes to a squad, we'll get to Stephen in a bit as well. But now, I mean, this is a team, Nidhi, which got 99 points, won the league, 97 points, didn't win the league.
Yes.
Won the UEFA Champions League. The season before that, lost in the final.
Right.
Last season, of course, was really weird for everyone involved, especially us. But I enter into every game thinking, all right, A, we can win, we will win, and B, it's going to be a joy to watch this bloody team. All right, these are the best days that you and me personally, I don't know about Stephen, but these are the best days that we have seen as Liverpool supporters. What do you think about the squad? What do you think about Klopp? What do you think about the identity? I mean, this team is something which I love watching.
Right. I mean, look, I'll talk about the transfer window first. Look, I don't think we had a good transfer window as well. So, for everyone who thinks that, there is this idea that we have no complaints from the club, or we don't want any more players. That's not true. I personally think we should have gone for a forward, because I was convinced that Origi is going to leave. Now, without getting too much into the transfer talk, coming to the squad, look, I'll say one thing, which is also something that I've been saying. We are already stronger with, our centre backs coming in, with us signing one of the brightest, centre backs in Europe, young centre backs in Europe.
But Nidhi, we are a bit short up front, don't you think?
I totally agree, and I'm coming to that. Now, centre backs we are sorted. So now what happens is you have the best centre back in the world back. You have his partners back. You have midfielders who are playing in their natural positions. So I think that the Tsimikas has been playing a lot more. We've already discussed it. So there is a lot of good things happening. The only thing I would say is that the forward line, that's a little bit of iffy to me, because you can throw names around. You can talk about Origi and Minamino and Salah, Mane, Firmino, and of course Jota. But outside of Salah, Mane, Jota, and Firmino, both Origi and Minamino, I think that they haven't done exactly what we expected them to do, and it's not their fault. Look, Minamino came into a team when the team was basically broken, and he could not do what he was supposed to do. So we still might see the best of Minamino. I think that up top we are definitely a bit light. But again, that's where I trust Klopp, and and I see that if he's played Minamino in these preseason games, he must have seen something. Origi, when he came on against AC Milan, got a lot of flack, and he's here for a holiday and this and that. But he was really good against Milan. He got the assist, which got us the equalizer. So I mean, as long as Klopp is okay, I am okay. I would have ideally wanted to see a striker come in, but we work with what we have.
Yeah, Stephen, you mentioned, I mean, in our last podcast, you mentioned about Doku, and we saw him in the Euros. And when I saw him in the Euros, I was working on the Euros here in India. And when I saw Doku, the first thing, Stephen, that I thought about was you, because you mentioned about him. Apparently, we were linked. I don't know how true is that. But is there an area of this squad you think we are lacking?
Well, in terms of being linked, it's true that he was actually at Anfield, and this is before he signed professionally in Belgium. He was at Anfield. He was taken around the club by like Sadio Mane and Jurgen Klopp, and they were basically spent the day with him, showing him around, trying to encourage him to join the club. And he, in my opinion, correctly decided that he needed to go and play professional football and then come back and join a team like Liverpool. So it's very, if you look at him in terms of like Harvey Elliott decided the opposite. He decided he would sign for Liverpool while he was still a kid, just about starting as a pro. And Harvey Elliott went away on loan for a year, sort of learned a new side to his game, and then came back as a sort of pro and slotted right in. So I think either way, you can sort of go down either path, but I think Doku probably chose the right path for himself. When you look at him now, he still looks very raw. When you watch him in France, he still looks very raw. He runs with his head down sometimes, which is kind of a bit Milan Baros, and it's sort of a worry. He has little traits that he just needs to change, and he will, because he's still a kid. He's like 19, and the whole thing about end product is, like, if you look back at like John Barnes and Steve McManaman and all these great wingers, it's sort of dribbling that got them into the first team, but end product always sort of came later. And that's true for a lot of players, that end product, this gets picked up in the sort of later years, like 23, maybe 22. If you look at Lampard and Gerrard, they both had a big spike at about the age of 22, 23. And then that was like their new level for goals. Before that, they'd pick up like a few a season. So I think with Doku, he's still young. And I still think there's plenty of time for him to become the player he would need to be for him to start in our team. And whether it's a case of he comes here and learns that as like a bit part player, or whether he would need to spend a bit more time somewhere and then we pick him up after that, in the way we did with, say, Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah. All these guys that came to us as more the finished product. Diogo Jota would be another one. So I think with forwards, we tend to do the latter. We want to get guys who are either dirt cheap, like Doku before he signed pro, or Harvey Elliott, or Solanke, even the ones that don't work out. But there's a very clear system. We get them.
Or even Minamino?
Yeah, sure. We get them when they're dirt cheap. There's no risk. Once the price goes up into that sort of Markovic area, we think, that's too much to lose. If that doesn't work out, that can cripple us, because then we would have to sign another player of that level and kind of just write off the guy that we just bought. And I think we avoid that. I think we would rather sign someone for a few million or for 40 million, but not really the in-between area, where that's where we can make losses. So if you pick up a bunch of guys for 4 or 5 million, you can probably flip a bunch of those for like 10, 12 million that don't work out, like Solanke.
Right.
But if you go and buy a Markovic, that's like your budget for the summer for a forward, and then he doesn't work out, and then you're like, right, what now?
Yeah.
And that's why we're I guess not investing in players like Doku at the moment. He's not quite the finished product, so he's still a project. And if that project doesn't work out, then we're kind of stuck with a player that isn't what we need, but probably doesn't have the value to sell that we would make a profit on. So it's a case of what exactly do you do with that guy? I think that's probably why we took a pass, I guess, on Doku.
But Stephen, is that one of the reasons why we passed on Sarr as well? Because Watford apparently wanted a huge fee.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Sarr looks like he's someone that's maybe more ready than Doku. He's a bit older and he has more end product. But yeah, it's very possible we look at that guy as well and think he's not quite what we need. Like when he was in the Premier League, he didn't have the numbers that we would want from a forward. And I guess we would rather wait a year and see what he's like in another season in the Premier League and see if he has Jota levels of end product within him. Because even looking at Jota's numbers, his underlying numbers just screamed that he was someone that could score a lot of goals. He was like underperforming XG by like 50, 60% for one season. And you just think, well, is that someone who's just going to regress towards the mean? And if he does, that's a 15, 20 goal a season player just that you pick up because he's undervalued. And I guess that's the thing with Sarr, is that he doesn't really have the underlying numbers at the moment to suggest he could be another Diogo Jota. And that's in terms of end product. And that's probably what we want. We want another, because we're looking to replace Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. They're getting into the like 30s now. So we need someone that's going to pick up all the end product. And Jota's a good start, but we need another one. And I don't think that's Sarr at the moment. And I don't think that's Doku at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see if we sign this Adeyemi kid from Salzburg, because for me, that's probably just another one of the same things where we probably want him to go to a team like Southampton or Watford or Wolves and just have a year and just see what he is. And maybe Patson Daka is the same. The guy joined Leicester. Maybe I heard he was someone else that we were interested in, but again, it's that thing of, well, how well does this Austrian league translate to what we're doing? Because as we saw with Minamino, he looked phenomenal in Austria. He was great against us in the Champions League. He's probably the best player on the pitch. But it took a year and he's still not quite there. And it's been a hard year because of COVID and stuff. But yeah, it's that thing again of how much of that Patson Daka money do you want to spend for a guy that just isn't ready? And then if he isn't ready and you need to sign another guy to replace Patson Daka, where does that money come from?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, and speaking of the forward options, and this has been a pretty hot topic of conversation almost everywhere. Manas, do you think that now with what is happening in the team and what we've seen, Jota is starting to become more important than Firmino in the system? I hate to say it, I absolutely love Bobby. But
is this for me, Nidhi?
Yes, I'm asking you. Do you think Jota is becoming more important in the system now? Of course, right now Bobby's injured, and I hate to say this, but do you think that is the case?
Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation with Stephen Warnock. By the way, we had Stephen Warnock with us. We had Gareth Roberts join us as well from the Anfield Wrap, and the topic of Roberto Firmino is very, very, it's, you can have multiple opinions about it, because they both were of the opinion that, and I understand where they're coming from, because it's the last season or two has been very indifferent, especially the last season. Roberto Firmino has not been firing on all cylinders. He was the road warrior when we won the league, and before that as well, he had a great season. But Jota has had an impact which you cannot deny. He's more direct, he's more physical, but Firmino offers us something which, Nidhi, I remember when we were playing against Chelsea, the build up in the game, you mentioned that, listen, I would rather play Firmino because the way he drops into the midfield, the way he creates space is something which we might need against better quality opposition, and that is what Roberto Firmino provides us. But then Jota is that spark. Although he missed a sitter against Palace from like 1 yard away from the goal, but he is someone who can. He is a very direct player. He can head the ball, he can cross the ball, he runs with the ball. He is so strong. You know, he never falls down. When he falls down, he gets up very quickly. There's something about Jota which is very different compared to Roberto Firmino. I can understand both arguments of the conversation. Jota is better, Firmino is better, but at the moment I'm leaning more towards Jota. Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, it's one of those interesting questions again. Basically, the thing I would say about Roberto Firmino is this: if you look at Roberto Firmino's numbers for everything he does on the pitch, pretty much nothing much has changed in the last couple of years, other than he scores less goals. And that's pretty much.
But Stephen, isn't that important?
Sure, but let me finish. So that's the thing. That's the big change, right? And it basically depends on how much value you put on that in terms of importance. And so, as fans, I think that's of the utmost importance, because scoring goals is the most important thing a player can do. And we tend to praise the players that score goals. If you look at Gareth Crook's team of the week, he basically only picks players that score goals. So if a defender scores a goal, he's the best defender that week. And you're thinking that's nonsense, but yet he does. And I think people place a very high importance in players that score goals. It's a very important task, probably the most important. So you can't just dismiss it. But there's two different performances going on the pitch. There's the individual performance, which again is stuff like scoring goals, assists, getting involved in on the ball. And then there's the team tactical performance. It's all the stuff that you do that's kind of about making the team's tactical game plan come to work. And we kind of only see one of those things. We kind of don't see the other. And a big part of the reason for that is a coach isn't going to come out and say, this is what we're planning to do this week, and this is what this player is doing in this role to make it work. So we don't really know what they're meant to do. But I remember when Dirk Kuyt was at Liverpool with Rafa Benitez, a lot of people had a big problem with Dirk Kuyt, but he was the first name in the team sheet. And Rafa Benitez basically used to say that, like, he was the reason Liverpool played the way they played, the reason they had the intensity they did, the reason everything worked was because of Dirk Kuyt. And we would look at it and think, nah, he doesn't though. He just runs around a lot. It's like a headless chicken sometimes. And that's the attitude fans have, because he didn't have a lot of pace. He was very clumsy sometimes when he received the ball. He would just bounce off him at times. He would lose the ball. Some attacks would just die as soon as they reached him. We couldn't see the game in the way that Rafa Benitez said it. And so we can't decide whether it's a case of that's Rafa Benitez playing favourites, which is what you used to hear with Dirk Kuyt, or whether there's actually something to it. And Rafa Benitez has a very clear system, and Dirk Kuyt's the guy that makes it work. And as a result of that, he sacrifices a lot of his individual play. He doesn't maybe get into the positions as much as we would like him to. We heard the same with Gini Wijnaldum, and we heard the same with Roberto Firmino from Pep Linders. They would always say that those are the guys that make Liverpool play the way Liverpool play. So going back to the start of the podcast where I said it was very interesting, Klopp was talking about how we were counter-pressing in the same way as we were in the past. Without those guys, without Roberto Firmino, without Wijnaldum, I thought that was a really important thing that he said. Because it kind of implies that we're finding a solution to the problem of not having Firmino on the pitch and not having Wijnaldum on the pitch. And it's starting to come to fruition. So in that sense, if we can get more output from Jota on the pitch and we don't need Firmino on there, that's a good thing. But it's also good to have just different horses for courses. Like you were saying about how Firmino came in against Chelsea. I also thought that was the right decision, because you can't let Jorginho dictate that game. And if you look at Jorginho's stats in every game this season up until he played Liverpool, he just dominates the game. And as soon as he played Liverpool, he barely touched the ball. And when he did, he gave it away. And we, within the first minute, I made a comment on my Twitter feed that, like, we pressed Jorginho up against the line. They won a throw-in, and from the throw-in, Firmino was basically right up his backside, and Jorginho put the ball out for a Liverpool throw-in their final third. And that was basically, yep, that's Firmino's job today. He's just going to make Jorginho have a crap game.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what else Firmino does. If he fulfills that task, then our entire system functions. Because Chelsea can't build up play through us if they can't use Jorginho. And that means that they're going to struggle. They're going to be pinned back. We're going to dominate the ball, and then it's us that has the initiative in the match. We're then dictating the whole game to Chelsea. And that's the thing that Firmino gives us. And so we can't just dismiss that because he doesn't score goals, because that's the difference between winning a game and not. Because if you can't dictate the play to the other team, you're not going to have the same number of chances. You're not going to score the same number of goals, and they're going to have a lot more chances. So it's more important that your game plan comes to life than it is having a guy on the pitch that's going to score more goals than someone else. And it's trying to separate out those two things, to not think about it in like individualistic terms, because I think today in football, I think everyone thinks too much about individuals. Right. Everything's become sort of like a cult for an individual. We fanboy certain players. That it just didn't happen really when I was a kid, but it is a big thing now. And I think that's what's happening with Firmino. Is Firmino doesn't really have that same numbers that a guy like Jota will ever have. Yeah. But he does a different thing, and it's important for success, and you can't just dismiss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I mean, bro, like there hasn't been a conversation over the last 1 year that I've listened to like so in depth. That makes so much sense. But I have to ask you a follow-up question, Stephen, when you said that, like the throw-in situation that you mentioned. Sorry, Nidhi, if I am interrupting.
No, please go ahead.
But the throw-in incident that you spoke about, do you think each and every day when Liverpool train week in, week out, that is something that, I mean, it might sound very stupid when I ask you that, but do you think that is genuinely something, a thought process which goes through every training plan that we have? Like you mentioned, all right, Jorginho gets a lot of balls, so Roberto Firmino, all right, maybe he won't be that advanced on the pitch. When Jorginho gets the ball, he has to be in and around him. A striker, a number 9, has to be doing that when Chelsea are taking a throw-in. Is that something which, if you get what I'm saying, is that something which is so in depth in every team, especially Liverpool?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's really hard to separate out one of the problems I think a lot of people have with football is it's really hard to separate out what is instructed and what is instinctive to a player. So if you listen to Jurgen Klopp, I remember him saying that whenever a player joins the club, he doesn't give them any instructions for like 6 months. He just wants to see them play. And then after that, he'll basically dissect their game, pick the things he likes and encourage them to do more of that, take all the things he doesn't like and then discourage them from doing it, and then also encourage them to do things that they're not doing already that he thinks they'll be good at. So like with Oxlade-Chamberlain, he was basically saying, you need to shoot more. And Oxlade-Chamberlain was like, but at Arsenal, I was always discouraged from shooting. And he's like, nah, you have a good shot, you should shoot more. And that's something Oxlade-Chamberlain mentioned. So if you look at it in terms of Gini Wijnaldum, Gini's first season here, he got like 15 goals and assists in the league combined. Right. And then from that, is that Gini Wijnaldum's natural game? If that fits into Jurgen Klopp's plan of letting the player have 6 months to find their feet at the club before you actually tell them what you want them to do. So after that, are we seeing the Wijnaldum that Klopp wants, which is a guy that doesn't score goals and doesn't get assists? But that doesn't make any sense to fans, because they're like, well, why would you want the player to score less and assist less? And that's the thing. It's like, well, as a footballer, you can't be in two places at once. You can't both be ahead of the ball and behind the ball. And if you're ahead of the ball when your team loses it, you're done. And if you're behind the ball when your team loses it, then you're important in stopping the other team's counterattacks. And if you look at England in the Euros, for example, they had no one ahead of the ball because Southgate's a coward as a manager. He doesn't commit anybody ahead of the ball to attack. So it makes it really easy not to concede goals, but it's also really hard to break teams down because you've just nobody making runs from deep, no third man runs, nobody just like trying to stretch the opposition's back line. You kind of need all these things in your team, and it doesn't matter who provides them. It's just it matters that you have them. But you also need the other thing, which is numbers behind the ball. And if you don't have numbers behind the ball, you just get tore apart in every counter-attack. And we saw that with Man City in the past. It was like the biggest criticism of Man City. It's basically the reason everyone said that they won't win a European Cup is because good teams will get the ball off them. And then if they have 3 men behind the ball, one of them has to make a tactical foul. And if they don't make a tactical foul, they're done because they only have like 3 men to stop a counter-attack. And there's just far too much pitch. If you lose the ball like 30 yards from the opponent's goal, and you've only got 3 men behind the ball to cover that amount of pitch, you're done. There's just too much space. And so that's the thing. It's like trying to decide what is Firmino's job versus trying to decide what is Firmino just playing the way Firmino understands the game. And a lot of it looks instinctive. The way Firmino reads space and blocks up spaces and makes movements to stretch teams. If you've got coaches saying he's the best in the world at doing that, if you've got guys like Mourinho pointing this out and Wenger pointing this out and Thierry Henry saying he would be the best partner to play with, and if you've got all these guys saying he's the best in the world at doing this, it's very unlikely someone's just going to come in and say to another forward, you sign like Vlahovic and say to Vlahovic, okay, I want you to do what Firmino does. Yeah. Because that's literally, he's the best in the world. You want me just to learn that like through osmosis one day? How's that going to work? So I think this idea that everyone else can do what Firmino does and score more goals is kind of a bit fanciful. And it just comes down to like a lack of appreciation or understanding of what it is that he brings. And it's very hard to sort of detail it and show it as well. It's kind of like, I mean, we don't even have tracking data, but you would almost need tracking data to show how the opponent's shape changes based on what certain players are doing, interacting on the pitch. And I know that William Spearman, for example, we hired this physicist from CERN, and he's the first person I saw use tracking data to show pitch control and how basically different players move opponents around to create space for each other. And the video is available on Opta. If anyone wants to see it, it's from William Spearman. But we got this guy, this physicist, on the basis of Schum seeing what he was doing with tracking data. And if we're looking at players that can open up spaces like that, maybe that's something that becomes a lot more coachable because you can actually sit down and show players like a detailed video and followed by a visualization to basically show the impact it's having on the pitch. And then once people can see it, maybe it's easier to learn it. But I don't think Firmino's doing something that he's just told to do. I think it's something that's very instinctive in the way he plays. I just think he's a special player. It's just, absolutely. In the same way that I don't think you can just tell someone to play the way Zidane plays or tell someone to defend the way Van Dyke plays. Yeah. In the same way as I don't think you can tell someone to just learn how to run like Firmino. It just doesn't really seem like something that just happens. It's through years of experience and their understanding of football. Because Firmino's played like every position on the pitch. He started out like centre back and then played defensive midfield as a youth team player. So it's like he just has these years of experience of playing every single position. So that he has a better understanding, I guess, of the pitch and control.
That's why we say the best in the world is Roberto Firmino, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look. For me, I absolutely love him. I hope he signs a new contract very, very soon. And Manas, I mean, we've had so many conversations about Roberto Firmino. I think this is perhaps one of the best descriptions anybody can put down of.
I totally agree.
Yeah, but Manas, I mean, Stephen mentioned about Man City and the Champions League, and I've got to ask both of you. I'll go with you, Manas, first.
Yeah.
I mean, our UCL draw, what was called the group of death. I mean, we've crossed the first hurdle with a bit of a heart attack. But what's your thoughts? Because I'm really looking forward to see Liverpool in the Champions League this season. I know people keep saying PSG and Man United and Chelsea. But I'm really looking forward to do what we do in the Champions League.
Yeah, a lovely question here for Henderson. So I mean, I am just so happy with that game, with that result. It was the game against Milan, Nidhi. I mean, it just felt so bloody good. The way we played, the way we started both halves. Like I mentioned earlier on the podcast, the first few, we had like a 2-minute spell where we were very sloppy and we conceded those 2 goals. But very happy with the way we started. We needed the points. We have two tough away games coming up, Porto and Atletico. Atletico is a team which I wanted to avoid for so many reasons, because there's just something about Atletico which I don't like. But I expect us to top the group. I expect us to qualify for the round of 16. And the Champions League is something which brings the best out of us. We have the squad, we have the players.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I feel that we have Anfield back.
Absolutely.
And that makes such a huge difference. The atmosphere makes such a huge difference. I'm positive. I'm very optimistic about the Champions League. Nidhi, what do you think about the Champions League?
Listen, I'm like I said, I'm really looking forward to what we do in the Champions League. I think that with Anfield back, that's a major advantage. With Van Dijk back, it's a major advantage. I think on our day, we can beat absolutely anyone in the world, and that's what the Champions League is about. But coming to you, Stephen, what were your initial thoughts on when the draw came out, and what do you think now of our chances in the Champions League?
Yeah, I'm sort of different in that I look forward to playing all the best teams in the Champions League. I think for me, that's the whole purpose of getting into the Champions League. Is
Atletico the best team? I don't think Atletico is the best team. It's a team which I don't like. That's what I meant.
Yeah. No, but so I actually like strong groups. A lot of people are afraid of getting a strong group. I actually like strong groups. And the main thing for me is basically avoiding those big long distance journeys, those travels into like Ukraine, Russia. I kind of want to avoid those. So when I predicted the Champions League draw, I was predicting almost this group, but with Ajax instead of Porto, I think. I basically figured we were going to get one of the Spanish teams from Group 1, because there were so many English and Spanish teams. They kind of all had to pair off against each other, and then maybe one team avoids a Spanish team. From England. So I thought we would probably get Atletico or Villarreal, and I kind of thought we would get Atletico because of history. And I secretly am happy with it because I don't mind playing Atletico in the group. I don't want to play them in a knockout game. And I think by getting them in the groups, we sort of avoid them in the early knockout rounds. So that's also a positive. It means that whenever we get the knockout rounds, the team that I would fear in the knockout game most, we can't get them. And for me, that's just a huge positive. So, but then again, I'm just positive about everything. That's kind of the way I roll. So whenever the group came out, I just loved it. I love the idea of playing Milan for the first time. I think the only, in the group stage, I think the only times we've played them have been in finals so far. So it was just like getting Milan was just like, when I was a kid, I used to grow up watching Arrigo Sacchi's Milan. And you just fall in love with Milan. It's like they had Van Basten and Hullet and Rijkaard and Lencini and Papin. They had George Weah. They've had so many top players over the years. They're just like, they are European royalty. And it was just, I was so looking forward to playing Milan. That was the only thing that I took from it. I think we have a good record against Porto in recent years as well. So I think everyone's expecting us just to walk over them, but I think they've been better than. I think they look better now than probably when we played them last. So they might actually cause some problems. They give Atletico Madrid a good game last time out, so that might not be the easy walkover that we expect. Right. But ultimately, we're the best team in the group. Everyone fears us, so I think we have a tendency to worry about everyone else, but realistically everyone else is worried about us. Like, it was the same when we got Atlanta last year, and people were worried about playing Atlanta, and you could tell as soon as Atlanta walked on the pitch against us, they were just bricking it, because like, they're playing Liverpool. That's how hard is that? They're playing Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool at Anfield. So I think that's the thing, is that everyone's going to come to Anfield just terrified of playing us, and very few teams are going to get out of it with anything to show for it. So, and then it's just about picking up a few points away, and we're going to do that. So it shouldn't be a problem.
Stephen, we get so many viewers because you are on our podcast. So just to end it, just to sign things off, what's the message? What can we expect from this side this season?
Yeah, just I always go into every season believing we can succeed. And it changes depending on where we're at as a team. Like when we were in the Hodgson era, success was probably just not going bankrupt and sacking Hodgson before the end of the season. that's success. But now success is competing for and winning trophies, and we don't have a God-given right to win anything. And I think that's a thing people sort of maybe misunderstand. I see it a lot with like PSG and Man City, because they're going to dominate because of the amount of money they spend. But all you can do is just support your team, and if you're competing for the top trophies, that's it. That's the aim for every club, is to compete for those top trophies, and that's what we're doing. And if you don't live these moments and you don't enjoy these moments, you're going to regret it, because it will go away at some point. It will go away. Football is very secular. People who are kids now probably don't realize this, but go and find any team in history who were at the absolute top, and then just ask, are they now? Are the Chicago Bulls the best team in the world now? No. But were they back in the like 90s? Yes. And every team just goes through these cycles. And when you're at the very top, you can't believe for a second that you'll fall, but you will. It happens to every team. And so you just have to enjoy right now, because otherwise it's what are you doing? Why are you, what are you getting from this?
So true.
Ultimately, this is a hobby, and you have to get enjoyment from it. And work out whatever you think happiness is in supporting your team, and then just find that within yourself, because being negative about this team makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. I can't understand it.
Exactly. I mean, that's so well said, because Nidhi, I spoke about this with you. We didn't start supporting the club because of net spend, the owners, away goals, like signings, nothing, Nidhi. It didn't matter. We just started supporting the club because we just randomly fell in love, and it's just so organic, and it's become so, we've got out of touch why we love this club. At times I think it's just so important to realize, like what Stephen has mentioned, that let's just enjoy this.
Absolutely. I think, yes, Stephen, please go ahead.
I was going to say, like, for me, like, the reason I got into football was always on in my house, but I never really paid attention to it. And then there was a game on, and basically I noticed that the crowd were very engaged in it. I could hear it. So I went and sat and tried to work out what was going on, because I was just curious now, like, why are people reacting this way to something? Because I just thought football was kicking a ball around. And I realized that it was John Barnes. Basically, every time John Barnes got on the football, the whole attitude of everyone in the stadium changed. There was like an expectation to see what he would do with the ball. And then I started doing that as a kid. I was like watching him, and I was like, oh, what's he going to do? Why is everyone waiting for him to do something? Like, what has he done before that's made? And so that's the way I was thinking as a kid. And it turned out the game was I think it was 1989, and it was the 4-3 defeat to Crystal Palace. And I was just a kid, so I had no concept of trophies or winning or none of that, because when I played football with my friends, it wasn't about winning. It was just like, it's just kicking a ball around to enjoy it. And so that's what I found when I was watching that. That's why I fell in love with football. It wasn't even Liverpool, it was just football. It was the way it made people feel whenever something was going to happen. It was that energy in the stadium, and that's what hooked me on football. And then Liverpool came after that, simply because that's who Barnes played for. And so to get from that to basically being entirely motivated by transfers and who the owners are and all of that, it's kind of, it just loses something. And I don't understand how you get there. And I don't know if it's to do with like computer games where you just like buy all the stuff that you need to do the best, and then you sort of take that approach into real life. But it's not a very fun way to sort of follow your team. Again, I don't know what you're getting out of it really. But yeah.
Absolutely. I think at the base of everything, I think football is about enjoyment, and that's not just for Liverpool. That's for every team. But I hope the good thing is that most of the Liverpool supporters that do. That's why it's one of the best supported teams in the world.
I'm sorry, Nidhi, like before every game, in the Premier League, we hear Peter Drury read the lineups, okay, and we get all excited. And I hope in India, when we see the Champions League, when they hear me reading of the lineups, they get excited as well. That's something that is why we love the game. That's why we love the club. And I don't understand how at this position of the season, winning everything that we have in the last few years, we feel negative entering into a game. It shouldn't happen, and that's just my message to everyone who is listening to this at this point of the podcast. Just enjoy it. I mean, live it while it lasts, because we are seeing the best version of Liverpool.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we are set up for a fantastic season ahead. I think there is a lot of positives to look at. I think there are much more positives than negatives. This was a brilliant chat, Stephen. I mean, I think this was again, we talked last time. This was absolutely brilliant. So thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime, seriously.
Always lovely to have you here. So thank you, everyone. This was Menace in the Monk. This was Stephen Drennan, Babu Yagu on Twitter. Please follow him for absolutely fantastic analysis. He's also come up with his own podcast called The Crack Stats. And it is an absolute joy to listen to. So I encourage all of us, our listeners, to go and follow Babu Yagu and subscribe to his podcast. This was Menace in the Monk. Cheers and bye-bye.